Special aid. World leaders attempt an averting humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Power struggle. Global energy depletes as countries fight to close the power gap. Jab milestone. India celebrates as the country reaches yet another goal in fighting the virus. Habitat experiment. Astronauts experience life on Mars here on Earth.
From the global resources of the Derana Media Network, this is Ada Derana World News Tonight. Now reporting from Studio 24 in Colombo, here's Suzanne Shenali.
A very good evening and thank you for joining us on World News Tonight. We start off today's coverage with the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi, after hosting an emergency summit, said the group of 20 major economies is determined to tackle the crisis in Afghanistan, even if it means having to coordinate efforts with the Taliban.
World leaders met virtually on Tuesday to discuss how to address the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. This was the first such meeting of G20 leaders since the Taliban seized control in August. 2 months on, and the country is facing economic collapse. Banks are running out of money, civil servants have not been paid, and food prices have soared. All agreed that ordinary Afghans desperately needed help. But most states are reluctant to formally recognise the new Taliban government. While most of the aid effort will be channeled through the United Nations, there will be some direct country-to-country assistance. Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi chaired the summit. This was the first multilateral response to the Afghanistan crisis, but two leaders were noticeably absent. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin did not dial in, suggesting differing international positions on the emergency. Ahead of the meeting, China demanded that economic sanctions on Afghanistan be lifted and that billions of dollars of Afghan international assets be unfrozen.
French President Emmanuel Macron launched €30 billion investment plan dubbed France 2030 that aims to help transform the country into a leader in zero-emission technologies.
He calls it France 2030. On Tuesday, French President Emmanuel Macron set out ambitious plans to transform his country into a technology powerhouse. The €30 billion investment plan targets sectors from cars to medicine and energy. It's also meant to drastically reduce emissions from industry. Macron says the stakes are high.
And so this conviction has a key point, meaning we must wage the battle of innovation and industrialization at the same time. We can't choose between the two, and we have to wage them together. And that means that we should put in a lot of public and private funds, because the winner takes all, as English-speaking countries say.
Many of the targets are aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Macron wants France to develop a low-carbon plane. Other goals include small nuclear reactors and massive factories to produce hydrogen fuels.
We absolutely must prepare for technologies that break away and for deep transformation in nuclear. The promise of what we call small modular reactors, small reactors that are more adaptable and safer, since safety is a key point in the nuclear debate.
Macron says the plan will give key roles to small, agile startups, not just established giants. The money allocated to the plan comes on top of a €100 billion recovery fund set up last year. Much of that also went towards promoting greener energy. Opposition politicians dismissed the plans as electoral campaigning, with a presidential election just 6 months away. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen said Macron wanted to be re-elected, whatever the cost to taxpayers.
An energy crunch stokes inflation as authorities from Beijing to Delhi scramble to fill in yawning power supply gaps, triggering global stock and bond market wobbles.
Authorities from China to India are scrambling to fill a power supply gap, and on Tuesday it rattled global stock and bond markets, with fresh worries that rising energy costs will stoke inflation and curtail an economic recovery. Power prices have surged to record highs in recent weeks, driven by energy shortages in Asia, Europe and the US. The impact of supply crunches in power and manufacturing components is being felt. Data Tuesday showed Japanese wholesale inflation hit 13-year highs last month, while shoppers in Britain have slashed spending, and China recorded a 20% drop in car sales. In its latest attempt to deal with the crisis, Beijing said it would further liberalise coal-fired power pricing and force industrial and commercial users to buy from the market. A widening power crunch has forced production curbs across China in industries such as cement and steel. In India, the Power Ministry warned states that federal energy producers will curtail supply to them. That's if utilities are found selling power on exchanges to take advantage of surging prices. Asia's third largest economy is facing large-scale outages as several power plants have low coal inventories. Oil rose towards $84 a barrel on Tuesday, within sight of a 3-year high, while coal has scaled record peaks and gas prices remain 4 times higher in Europe than at the start of the year.
The EU will offer to remove a majority of post-Brexit checks on the British goods entering Northern Ireland as it seeks to turn the page on the rancorous relationship with Boris Johnson. For more on this, we have Other Than World News special correspondent Prashani Rodrigo reporting from Helsinki in Finland. Prashani.
Yes, Shanali. The EU is to set out proposals later to address the row about trade in Northern Ireland. The UK wants to change the deal as a part of the Brexit process to allow goods to circulate more freely between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It says the current rules impose too many barriers to the sale of chilled meats and other products. The EU's proposal, which it calls far-reaching, are expected to involve reduced checks on goods and medicines. At the start of the year, a new post-Brexit arrangement known as the Northern Ireland Protocol was introduced to help prevent checks along the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. It involves keeping Northern Ireland in the EU's single market for goods, but this in turn creates a new trade border with Great Britain. Unionists say this undermines their place in the UK. Back to you, Shanali.
All right, thank you. That was Other Than World News special correspondent Prashani Rodrigo reporting from Helsinki in Finland. The US House of Representatives voted for a short-term debt ceiling fix, giving final approval to legislation temporarily raising the government's borrowing limit to $28.9 trillion.
On this vote, the yeas are 219, the nays are 206.
The Democratic-controlled U.S. House of Representatives gave final approval by a vote of 219 to 206 on Tuesday to a Senate-passed bill temporarily raising the government's borrowing limit to $28.9 trillion, putting off the risk of a historic default until early December. Democrats, who narrowly control the House, stayed unified, passing the hard-fought $480 billion debt limit increase, getting no support from Republicans, pushing back for now an October 18th deadline when the Treasury Department would no longer have the ability to make debt payments to lenders. Looking past Tuesday's vote, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters she hoped there could be a future bipartisan solution to the debt ceiling issue, despite top Senate Republican Mitch McConnell's warning that his party will not help next time. She also repeated that Democrats do not want to use a procedural maneuver called reconciliation to raise the ceiling. That is precisely what Democrats will need to do to get the December hike through the Senate if Republicans try to block them and no other solution is found. The Senate's vote last week to raise the limit, which had been more routine before the current era of fierce partisanship, turned into a brawl. In fact, the debt ceiling vote is to cover past spending already approved by Congress, including during Republican Donald Trump's presidency, which ended just 9 months ago.
I'm optimistic that these decisions have to be made.
Pelosi said she is hopeful that Democrats can work out changes to reduce the cost of their social policy plans in a timely fashion.
I'm very disappointed that we're not going with the original $3.5 trillion, which was very transformative.
Biden earlier this month suggested $2 trillion for the massive spending plan, after moderate Democratic Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema both said they would not support the measure's $3.5 trillion cost. Meanwhile, Biden's separate bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure bill is hanging in the balance, as progressives say they won't vote for one without the other.
Let's go into a short commercial break. We'll be back soon with more world news. Welcome back. The North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has criticized the US, saying that there are no grounds to believe Washington is not hostile towards Pyongyang, and has called for the strengthening of his regime's military capabilities to counter what he insists are hostile forces.
Standing beside North Korea's largest missiles, leader Kim Jong-un defended his country's weapons development on Monday. State media carried comments from Kim saying it was necessary to increase the North's military for self-defense in the face of hostile policies from the US and South Korea. Kim made the comments in his speech at the Defense Development Exhibition on Monday, according to a report by state news agency KCNA. Photos in the ruling party newspaper showed Kim standing next to the country's largest intercontinental ballistic missiles that have been unveiled but not yet test-fired. A spokesperson for South Korea's defense ministry said they were monitoring the situation closely. South Korea recently test-fired its first submarine-launched ballistic missile and has bought American-made F-35 stealth fighters. North Korea has pushed ahead with its missile program, and analysts say it has begun a major expansion of its main nuclear reactor for fuel for nuclear weapons. The US has said it is willing to hold diplomatic talks at any time with Pyongyang.
The Amhara region is yet again caught in the crossfire as the Ethiopian military launched offensive efforts against Tigrayan forces in the area.
Military trucks heading north in Ethiopia's Amhara on Monday, as the country's federal army reportedly launched a ground offensive against Tigrayan forces in the region. Amhara and neighbouring Tigray are engaged in a decades-long dispute over territory. That's after Tigray, whose ruling TPLF once dominated Ethiopian politics, enlarged its borders over a quarter of a century ago, to include fertile farmlands also claimed by Amhara. Amhara sent forces into the area, officially known as Western Tigray, when fighting erupted between the National Army and forces loyal to the TPLF 11 months ago. Amhara forces have retained control ever since. But in June, the Tigrayans took back most of Tigray, forcing the federal military to withdraw, and then invaded Amhara in July. That, it said, was a tactic to try and force Amhara to withdraw from the heavily militarized Western Tigray. Last week, the Amhara regional spokesman signaled on Twitter that an offensive against the Tigrayans could be imminent. Diplomatic sources reported heavy airstrikes in several Tigrayan-held areas of Amhara since Friday. TPLF spokesperson Getachew Reda said a ground offensive by the National Army alongside Amhara forces had begun on Monday. Asked if an operation had started, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's spokesperson Bilene Seyum said the government would continue to counter the TPLF's destruction, violence and killings in the Amhara region and elsewhere, without elaborating further. The fighting since November 2020 has displaced millions of people and forced hundreds of thousands of Tigrayans into famine, a situation the United Nations blames on a government blockade, which the government denies.
A Wyoming coroner says 22-year-old Gabby Petito died of strangulation 3 to 4 weeks before her body was found. Brian Laundrie, who is wanted for debit card fraud charges and for questioning in Petito's homicide, has been on the run for nearly a month.
Weeks after the body of 22-year-old Gabby Petito was found near a Wyoming campground, one question is answered.
In the manner of death of Gabrielle Lenora Petito, we find the cause and manner to be death by strangulation, and manner is homicide.
Teton County Coroner Dr. Brent Blue said Petito was strangled 3 to 4 weeks before searchers discovered her body on September 19th. The young woman had vanished on a road trip with her boyfriend, 23-year-old Brian Laundrie, who has been missing for nearly a month. Petito was last seen alive on August 26th. Traveling west across the U.S., Petito documented their van life on social media with videos and pictures depicting a loving couple on an adventure. Laundrie returned home to Florida without her on September 1st, driving Petito's white van. Police, search warrant. After Florida police named Laundrie a person of interest in the case, Police in Moab, Utah released body cam footage from a traffic stop after a caller reported seeing Laundrie striking Petito.
There's two